Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness, and looking somewhat frazzled this week is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, you look like you've been run through the ringer.
Oh, that's what an anime convention during a pandemic will do to you.
Now, was this an in-person con or another virtual event?
This was a double whammy. Fun thing about 5-year contracts is that we were contractually obligated to host a show in person at our convention center and hotel this year for the convention that I run, because the state of Missouri and the city and county that the convention takes place in have no limits whatsoever on gatherings, no caps, nothing. They just have nothing. They literally do not care at all. So unlike last year, we could not get out of our contract. And before anybody says anything, you gotta understand that the cancellation fees are more than my yearly salary.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's real bad. So we, had to put on this show, and none of us wanted to be there. We were all very angry that we were there. We continually referred to the show as Contractual Obligation 2021. But it was okay. It was really okay. So there was an online portion that anybody could, if you bought a ticket, you could get into, and you could watch anything that took place in the convention center was streamed online, and anything that was streamed online was streamed into the convention center, so that nobody really missed out on any of the programming. So we had some virtual guests and 2 in-person guests who actually wanted to come. God bless them. And it wasn't too crazy. It wasn't too huge. It wasn't too crowded. Most people were, everybody was more or less masked. It was just whether or not they were wearing them correctly, and social distancing was really hard. But we did it, and it's done, and it's over with. And if there is any sort of goodness in this universe, we will not have to do it again.
Well, on the upside, I'm sure that after having a year to air itself out and get the scent of geek funk washed out, I'm sure it was much easier to breathe this year after a year off of in-person events inside that convention center.
Yeah, it gave them that year to remodel the convention center, so it actually looks really nice, and we're like, oh, this is much too nice for our event. These brand new floors look real good. Oh no.
And then, of course, there was, the ever-present question of how long it would take before you destroy this.
Yeah. They don't put out the fine china for us weebs, but there was definitely the worry of oh no, there's brand new murals on the walls, and I'm like, somebody's gonna lean on that with their wig that has been sprayed with something.
Or a Homestuck fan will put their hands upon it.
Oh my God, yeah. You know what? I haven't seen a Homestuck fan in a long time. But if you say Homestuck 3 times in the mirror.
I think that you're joking, but I am not willing to take that chance.
Yeah, no, I don't know what'll happen, but I would not try it.
All right. Well, let's see. My time since our last recording has been somewhat less exciting. Although I did get my first my first vaccination jab. I am on Team Pfizer, so I got my first jab. The only side effect I experienced with my first vaccination was some soreness in the arm. But since I'm getting the Pfizer, I'm told that it's the second shot that really kicks your ass. So we shall have to see what happens when I get my second one on May the 8th. So yeah, great. I had to schedule it during my work weekend, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, I did mine on a Wednesday. My second shot was on a Wednesday night, so I had D&D immediately after that. And at the end of the night, I was literally slumped in my chair, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay." And they were like, "Okay, well, it's 9:30. Why don't you go to bed?" And then the next day, I went into work and had to leave in the middle of my shift because I was so dizzy. And just felt awful. And that one knocked me on my ass for 3 straight days. No joke.
Well, I don't know how they did it in your neck of the woods, but because I live in Baltimore County, which is the most populous county in the state of Maryland, I didn't get a luxury of choosing when my appointment would be. I had to pre-register, and then the state of Maryland sent an email going, "This is your appointment. Show up or don't. It's up to you, but we can't change this shit." And I kind of raised my eyebrows that a portion of the email said, "Do not arrive more than 30 minutes early to your vaccination," which kind of raised my eyebrows because, like, you'd think something like this, you'd want to be early to get it done and over with. Then I actually got to the Timonium Fairgrounds where they were holding the vaccinations and saw why they don't want you to arrive so early, because Jesus fucking Christ, that line. Okay, so. Yeah, so first off, the Timonium Fairgrounds, they aren't that large to begin with. They're maybe about the size of the football stadium. So they're also in the middle of a very urban portion of Baltimore County. It's not like it's in a field somewhere like where they hold the Maryland Renaissance Fair. No, this is right smack dab in the middle of a town. And you can only get into the fairgrounds via a normally very busy main street. So you have to get off of the 695 outer loop onto Betonia Road. So there's basically, when I left 45 minutes early because I anticipated that I was going to be stuck in traffic. What I did not anticipate was that I was going to be spending 2 hours sitting still on 695 on a Saturday trying to get off the exit onto the highway to get to my vaccination. God. So thankfully they didn't really give a shit if you were late because of traffic. It was really just, look, are you here on this day? Do you have your confirmation email? Great, go get stuck. So yeah, it's
yeah, since I work for a hospital, I got vaccinated before the public. So it was just like the hospital said, okay, your tier of employment is now open to, because like obviously they saved all the first doses for like ER and patient facing people. And since I don't work in the ER and I'm not technically patient facing, I was in like the second tier to get it. So they're like, hey, your tier is now open. Here's the scheduler that we have just for St. Luke's employees, which is the hospital I work for. Have at it, make your appointment. So I got into the very first one I could get into. And that was on like a Thursday or something. And then, the 3 weeks later to whatever it was, 3 weeks later, like the only day that week I could get it was on a Wednesday. So it was like, well, shit.
Well, unfortunately, because my job allows me to work from home, I had to wait until John Q. Public was able to get his vaccination, so I get to wade through the crowds. So, yeah. So, but anyway, so that's pretty much what I've been up to, outside of just the general malaise that comes with being stuck indoors, counting the bumps on the popcorn ceiling of my bedroom, and trying to find magic eye pictures within said bumps. So yeah, it's been pretty boring for me on this end. So, but of course, this is all a ramble. We do have things to do, so let's just get right to it. Our discussion topic this week is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the newest Marvel series from Netflix. We're also going to do a brief recap of Wandavision because everything going on in the new year, we kind of missed that when it came through. So we'll do kind of a brief walkthrough of that leading into Falcon and Winter Soldier. But of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek, and we got some questions here. First questions are from Erica, and the first one she has is for me. And her first question is, I really enjoyed the Nerd War episode on the Game Gear versus the Game Boy. Do you intend to do any more such episodes in the future? And the answer to that question is yes. We actually the genesis of the idea was I wanted to do a debate about the Super Nintendo versus the Sega Genesis, but then Skyblaze suggested since that's been done to death, it might be more conducive for us to do something that's something that hasn't really been discussed before. So we decided to do the the Game Gear versus the Game Boy, and we actually had a lot of fun with that recording. So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that we're already coming up with some ideas for future Nerd War debates. Wouldn't you agree, Kat?
Yes, I still know nothing about anything about gaming consoles, but I will happily ask questions and judge people.
Or maybe we'll come up with a topic where you'll actually be debating something, and I might have to moderate for you. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely a concept that we're going to revisit in the future. And we all had a lot of fun with it. And we're all really excited about it. Her second question is also for me, and her question is, looking back on my arguments in the Game Boy versus Game Gear debate, is there anything I would have done differently? Yeah, me and Skyblaze both, we actually made a lot of mistakes. Chief amongst them being we kept on bringing up stuff that was a disadvantage to ourselves. The first rule of any good debate is don't bring up anything that could hurt your argument unless your opponent does so first. And we both kind of kept on inadvertently making that mistake. The only other thing that I can really think of that might have helped my case would be I should have argued stronger for the ability to include the Game Boy Pocket in the discussion, because it was really just it wasn't a console, it wasn't a separate console. It's basically just a smaller Game Boy. So excluding that from the discussion would be kind of like talking about the PlayStation 2, but saying you can't talk about the PlayStation 2 Slim. It's just the same console, but just smaller. So that I would have argued harder against that judgment, looking back on it. But as I said in our previous at the end of that episode, I have nothing to be ashamed about in my arguments. I did my best, and there's no shame in being beaten by a well placed argument. And Skyblaze certainly had those. And Kat, she asked the same question of you. Is there anything that you would have done differently in moderating that discussion?
I would have told y'all to let me talk more so that I could get my questions asked, because there was a lot of I was sort of hesitant to interrupt. Because y'all were just talking, and some of the time you guys were sort of talking in circles around each other, just coming back to the same arguments. And there was a lot of me, because I'm not usually hosting anything, me sort of not wanting to interrupt. But I should have just interrupted a lot more and just said, "Hey, stop it. Let me ask some stupid questions."
Okay. Well, lessons learned for the future. Okay, and let's see here now. Next question here. This one comes from Lawrence, and it is for me. And he asks, what do I think about the rising prices of retro games over the course of the last year? And do I think that it will affect the collecting hobby in the long term? I mean, the prices are rising because of the pandemic. I mean, the quarantine has literally infected every facet of our lives, no pun intended. And so people are looking for any way to find solace in the dreary monotony that quarantine has inflicted upon us. And so, you're seeing a lot more people get into retro collecting simply because it gives them something to do and some new form of entertainment to explore. And that is, of course, going to drive up demand and is also going to drive up prices. I think that once things finally return to normalcy, whenever that blessed day may be, we'll see things kind of plateau and then kind of peter out again to a more normal level. So right now, I think that the spike is temporary. I don't think we're in the middle of a bubble. So much as just basically just a temporary spike because of the quarantine. So, long term, we'll have to see how things stand after quarantine has ended and we can resume something resembling our normal lives. So yeah, there's that. That's that. So my only worry is, again, that if things might go south again and stores might have to shut down again, and I really don't want to see stores have to basically close forever because of the quarantine, because that's been a worry with a lot of small business owners, that they won't be able to sustain themselves through quarantine, and they'll wind up having to shut down. So, but again, it's one of those things we just have to wait and see. Alrighty, and let's see here now. There's one here I had for you, Kat. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. This question here comes from Mark, and his question is, do you still follow Attack on Titan? And if so, what do you think of the ending?
Oh God, I knew somebody would eventually ask me about it, because I have not kept up with Attack on Titan at all. I feel bad about it because I've heard that it's so good. There's been a little bit of controversy about Attack on Titan, with specifically with the mangaka being a little bit, I don't know the right way to say it other than a bit of an imperialist, and the anime and manga having some very mixed Holocaust metaphors, that it's sort of not turned me off from watching it, but sort of put it onto the back burner for me, where I'm just okay, I don't need to prioritize this right now. But now that it's over, I really do want to blow through the rest of it that I haven't seen yet, because it's over and I don't have to wonder what was in Aaron's basement the whole time. The answers are already there. I had read a lot of the manga, and I eventually stopped collecting it, unfortunately, so I'm still very, very behind. But I kind of know how it ends. I've tried to keep up with the lore of it without actually watching it. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how the ending all comes together. But no, I have not kept up with it. I apologize. I'm being a very, very bad anime fan. And I haven't really watched very much lately because podcasts have taken over my life.
Okay. Well, I mean, things get lost in the shuffle in the chaos of the last couple of years, so that's understandable. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but if you think about it statistically, when was the last time an anime actually ended? So I feel like I do need to watch it because finally an anime, a very popular anime, actually ended.
I was actually surprised that the ending was so recent. I was under the impression that I thought that it ended like a couple years ago. I didn't realize it was still going.
The thing
So
with
that
Attack on
and My Hero Academia, I was like, wait, that's still going? Oh my god.
Yeah, My Hero is more recent than Attack on Titan. The problem with Attack on Titan was that they didn't do a bunch of filler for it, so there was like at least, I think, a 2-year gap between the first and second season.
The
Because
Doctor Who school of production.
Yeah, so the thing with that was that Attack on Titan was running in a monthly magazine and not a weekly magazine, so there was not nearly as much content ready to go by the time they finished the first season. So it's been taking them a long time to put it out because they've needed the manga to finish, and monthly releases makes it a little bit harder to do that. So, but it's all over now. I thought I heard there was going to be a movie or something, but I don't know any details on that. I just thought I heard somewhere that the ending was going to be incomplete and that there was going to be a movie, but it seemed like the ending that the anime actually got was pretty complete.
Okay, and speaking of movies, that actually brings us to his second question, which is, what is your opinion on the box office success of the Demon Slayer movie, and do you think that this will pave the way for future anime films to see wide release in the West?
That's a really good question because traditionally, I mean, you're lucky if an anime film makes it to the theater, and if it does, if it's like gets more than like a couple of screenings, it's really hard to believe that it did so well. But Demon Slayer, okay, it's a whole thing to unpack here, but anime is more popular and more acceptable today now than it was years ago. It just is. Every year it gets a little more normalized. So I can't remember the last time a new anime film was released in theaters. You occasionally get re-releases of older anime films, or they'll, like my local theaters, they do a Ghibli week or a Ghibli month or something like that, where they'll show Princess Mononoke and all that stuff.
Now, are we not counting the Pokemon films in this discussion?
Pokemon animated films, not
Yeah.
live action detective Pokemon sort of things. I don't know the last time one came out because I do not care at all about Pokemon.
I think the last one was the retelling of the first couple episodes of the series where Ash first meets Pikachu that came out, I want to say 2017, but I believe that got a theatrical release.
Yeah, so there's been more films since then. That is 4 years ago, my guy. Let's not think about how fast time has moved. But none of the, typically they'll do a release of a film, somewhere in LA. They'll do a debut, a red carpet that is for the actors and stuff, but it won't be one of the really, really big theaters. It won't be, obviously huge crowds, but they'll still do releases of some stuff. Because they did that for the My Hero Academia films, a couple years ago, probably back in 2019. And those were successful, but not like this. the amount of money that Demon Slayer has made is really quite astounding. And I've not heard a single bad thing about it, which is also just great to hear. I have not watched a single minute of Demon Slayer, but I'm told that one of the characters who's in the film is exactly like my D&D character, and I'm like, well, damn. Now I need to watch this.
Well, not to oversell it, but having watched some of it myself, if you like great animation, you're definitely missing out if you haven't seen this, because holy crap, this show brings the heat.
Yeah, I'm being a very bad anime fan, and I haven't watched anything in a while. It's because I can't multitask if I'm watching something with subs. I just can't multitask, and I just don't have access to that many dubs. But anyway, so will this pave the way for more films? I would like to think so. It would have to be another like big title. So another one of the big titles that are really hot right now, and not like Boruto or something like that where it's sort of passe. It's got to be whatever is super super hot right now. So like if they did another My Hero film, it might go somewhere with that. I don't know what else they could do that would be as big. But there might be something in the next couple of years that'll be super big. But again, it's got to be one of those big titles that everybody's watching. But I'd like to think that, yeah, that in, as anime just gets more accepted, which it just slowly has, as much as we like to think of ourselves as being super, super niche, it's just getting a little more popular every year.
Excuse me. All right, and let's see. Our final question here comes from Randy, and it is for me. And he asks, with E3 actually going on this year, what are some things that I would like to see? I would like to see Sony start stepping up some exclusives for the PlayStation 5. Demon Souls is great, but I've already played it. Spider-Man Miles Morales, again, another great game. Not necessarily something I'd call a system seller, since it's just an expansion of I think it's 2018 Spider-Man game. Really, there's not a whole lot there that I would really call a system seller for me. I would really like to see some exclusives stepped up. I mean, the last couple of big, like right now, the big major releases on the PlayStation platform that I had to look forward to are Nier Replicant and the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, both of which are coming out on PlayStation 4. So I'm really kind of looking for something to justify the $700 that I dropped on this console. So I'd really like to see some more exclusives coming down the pipe for the PlayStation 5. I'd like some information at all as to whether or not the next Nintendo Switch is a real thing or not. So, hopefully we'll see something from Nintendo on that. I'd also like to see more, any information whatsoever about the sequel to Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'd also like to find out if they're going to be doing more for the Zelda anniversary, or if the Skyward Sword port is just going to be it. And Microsoft can kind of just do its thing. I've kind of given up on the Xbox. There's really not a whole lot there to excite me. So I'm kind of, just Microsoft is, the Xbox is a thing. It's there. People enjoy it, but I'm not really too fussed either way, whether or not I see anything from there. But the big thing this year I want to see is I'd like to see some exclusive step up for the PlayStation 5. I think probably though that's not going to be the case, given how hard it is to get a hold of one of these consoles right now. I think Sony is probably going to wait until they've ramped up production on the consoles itself and actually get them out into the hands of consumers before they start waving exclusives around in our faces. So, I don't think that that's going to be a wish that is going to be granted to me this year. So, but of course we'll see. E3 is nothing if not surprising. So, we'll just have to see what happens. And that is all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions. We love answering them. So if you get your questions in, you just might get yours read on the air. And so with that, we're going to just march into the meat and potatoes of this episode, and that is the Falcon and Winter Soldier, the latest Disney Plus series in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with a brief stopover into WandaVision. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but we're going to try and keep it light, if for no other reason than we only have like another half hour on our clock here. So let's start with WandaVision, which I unfortunately did not see, but Kat, I think you caught a bit of that. So what was your take on WandaVision?
Okay, so the the original trailers for WandaVision did not in any way really cover what the story of WandaVision would be. So I feel like we all kind of just went in blind with a vague concept of what the show would be with no actual understanding of how amazing it was going to be. So the premise is that every episode is set in a different time period of a sitcom called WandaVision, which is about Wanda and the Vision and their happy, married, perfect life together and just general sitcom hijinks that you start to very quickly learn there is something desperately, desperately wrong because you, the viewer, know that Vision is dead and Wanda is not a TV character. So it's very cleverly set, like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then like the 2000s. So it works its way up while slowly revealing various plots and story hooks. During the course of the series, you find out that spoiler territory here, guys. Obviously, we're going to get into some spoilers. That Wanda has basically brought a version of Vision back to life, and is basically choosing not to process her trauma by sectioning off a corner, like a whole town, for her to live in, and is basically mind control puppeteering everyone in the town to act out her perfect TV life. The implications of it are really quite horrifying, and it's very much like she doesn't really understand how horrible this all is because she's just going, everyone here is really happy because she's forcing everyone there to be really happy, and Vision is real but not real, and it's very unclear. And this show also introduces Vision and Wanda's children, who are actual characters from the comics, which again has very strange implications because, again, it's not real. And she is basically manipulating the whole of reality to make her wishes come true. And during this, their sword, the group sword, which is very much like the group shield, is trying to intercept and work their way into this dome of alternate reality that Wanda has created. And this is the introduction of Monica Rambeau, who will appear in the next Captain Marvel film, which is going to be pretty cool. And it brings back a couple of returning characters. Darcy is in it, and I had, but it has a really fun ensemble cast with this really creative storyline. Again, awesome costuming. If the costuming on this wasn't just the best thing ever, that would be tragic, but it is in fact the best thing ever. And all of it leads up to Wanda realizing her destiny as the Scarlet Witch, which is the first time that her superhero name is used in the series or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So she kind of goes Super Saiyan, so to speak, and becomes way more powerful by the end of it, which is horrifying because she was already so powerful. So a lot of the build up for WandaVision is to set up bringing a version of Vision back into the MCU and to set up whatever her role in the next Doctor Strange film is going to be. It's wild times, and it was just such a great show. It's a big allegory or metaphor or whatever for trauma and grief, if you couldn't figure all of that out, and about how destructive grief can be and difficult grief can be. And it's really, really very beautiful show, very clever in all of the ways that it was executed.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm kind of sorry that I missed it. All right. Well, then that brings us now to the next series on the MCU slot, and our main discussion topic: Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And again, a lot to unpack here, but we're going to try and keep it light because again, we only have so much time. So I guess I'll go ahead and give the summary on this one. So this story picks up a few months after Endgame. Sam Wilson is kind of wrestling with the idea of becoming the new Captain America and not really feeling like he can live up to Steve Rogers' legacy. So he winds up donating the shield, he thinks, to the Smithsonian, believing that he's not ready to take on that mantle. Meanwhile, a group called the Flag Smashers is a little frustrated at how things have gone after what has been called the blip, which is when all the people who were snapped away in Infinity War have come back, and it's caused a bit of a kerfuffle with the people who have been dead for 5 years coming back and wanting to resume their normal lives, and the people who are left behind not wanting to give up the lives that they've managed to scrape together for themselves in the intervening 5 years. The Flag Smashers are led by a young woman named Carly Morgenthau, who excuse me, who winds up developing a very personal vendetta against the new Captain America, John Walker, who winds up getting the shield. And let's say his 10 years Captain America is not quite up to snuff, as we'll get into in a little bit. In addition, there's also a plot involving the recreation of Erskine's super soldier serum, which ties in with the Flag Smashers, and a surprising return of an old MCU character that we didn't think we'd ever see again. So, yeah, let's start breaking this down into its component parts, starting with the plot. So, Kat, what did you think of the story of Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I really enjoyed it. I thought that we were led to believe that the story of this was going to be a odd couple buddy cop kind of series with Sam and Bucky, and what we actually got was a really deep, very cutting look at both racism and how we treat our veterans, which are like deep, complex topics. So I think it was not at all what people were expecting. I think that we thought, oh, this is just going to be Sam warming up to becoming Captain America, and there's going to be some shield slinging, and we didn't know anything about what the actual story was. And I'm very, very pleased about how almost all of it went. I didn't think that it had too many weak links in it. I did really enjoy the story. I think we were all really thrown off by the first episode with John Walker coming in as Captain America. I think we were all like, what? What is this? This is not my captain. And so a lot of people were like, there was a lot of talk being generated after the very first episode. There was all the memes already hit the internet immediately, because that guy has the most punchable face in the world while he's in the mask. But I was very happy with the story. It was it tackled so many of these really complex topics, and it did it very tactfully, I thought. It showed that there was so many different sides to the story. It's not just a one-dimensional Marvel villain with a, here's a guy and a superhero who's going to go stop this one-dimensional Marvel villain. The villains themselves were very, very complex, and I thought just really well done.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how this series tackled its serious the topics of racism and how we treat our veterans. For a couple reasons. One, as you said, these are very deep and complex topics, and it is very easy to go off the rails with either one of these. And I felt like the show really walked the nice edge on that very well. And it also managed to do so in a way that it didn't feel preachy. It felt like it was part of it came naturally as part of the story and the interactions of the characters. Because like one of the things that I really hate, and this is a problem that has sort of kind of been a common issue in a lot of media lately, is writers will want to discuss an issue, and they'll do it by everything come to a grinding halt, having the characters look into the camera and go, "This is why this issue is bad, and this is how you're supposed to feel about it, and you're a bad person if you don't." And when I started hearing about, some of the topics that this show was tackling, I was afraid that was what was going to happen, but it didn't, and everything was handled very maturely. And I mean that in the actual sense, like this was a very mature story being told, and not someone trying to lecture me, pretending to be mature. That said, there were some things that I feel like the show kind of stumbled with. The chief problem that kind of binds all my issues together is the series length. This show is only 6 episodes long, and I really feel like it could have been served by being a little longer, or maybe cutting some of the story arcs, because it felt like the show was kind of juggling too many plates at once. The most emblematic thing about this to me is the series villain Carly, who I felt was actually the weakest character in the series. First off, she's a teenager fighting a bunch of grown adults, which that's always going to be a hard sell to me. Second, I feel like that her motivations weren't developed very well, and again, this is kind of a problem of the series length, that we didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with her. But a lot of her motivations, I felt like the series wanted to just kind of take her word on. Like, we're being told that, like, oh, when everybody came back, she got forced out on the streets and she suffered so much, but we're not really shown any of that. It also doesn't help that one of the first things she says is basically, oh, screw these people that were dead for 5 years and are coming back. So that immediately made her motivations a very hard sell to me, because, like, anytime you basically say, hey, screw these people who actually died, I'm gonna immediately have my hackles raised. And I also feel like that she kind of escalated things escalated with her in a way that didn't really make a whole lot of natural sense. Like, so, like, with the first time she blows up the supply center, I felt like kind of came out of nowhere, because prior to that, I kind of got the sense of, like, okay, she's using some violence to achieve her means, but there are some lines that she won't cross. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, blowing up buildings is the only language these people understand. And I'm like, okay, that escalated quickly. And I felt like she eventually turned into a character archetype that I really don't like, which is the self-righteous extremist. And this is a character that I discussed in one of our Voltron reviews. I think it was for season 7, where the character's basic motivation is, like, I may have some good points, but I'm not really interested in solving the greater problem. I just want to be right. And I feel like that really kind of was emblematic in her final fight scene with Sam, where she's just kind of wailing on the shield and screaming, fight me, fight back. And I'm just like, okay, you're not really interested in changing the world. You just want to be a martyr and be proven right. So that was kind of where things fell apart. Again, I feel like a lot of this could have been fixed with the series being lengthened a little bit, and maybe getting to spend more time with her. As it is, she kind of came across to me as just basically a Twitter activist power fantasy. But if we must stay within the 6 episode limit that we're given, I feel like a lot of the issues that I have with her could have been solved by just a simple flip of the script on her relationship towards the people who got snapped away. So in the series, she was one of the people who got left behind and is sort of displaced by the people coming back from the snap. And I feel like that her motivations would make a lot more sense if she had actually been one of the people who had been snapped away, and instead of her being left behind, she had been snapped away and come back to find that everything she knew was gone. Because one of the threads that runs through the series is Sam and Bucky are actually very sympathetic to her motives, if not her methods. And I feel like that there'd be more consistency in that if she was one of the people who was snapped away and then came back and wound up getting screwed by the system because of that. Because that's something that we actually see firsthand evidence of. In the first episode, I think it was, Sam and his sister go to get a loan from the bank to save their family boat. And the bank pretty much tells Sam, like, look, we know you're a hero, but, being dead for 5 years ain't no excuse. You're not getting this loan. So we've seen firsthand Carly come from that angle, would make her motivations and her actions make a little more sense. But even that was not a total deal breaker. All right, and of course, we have got to talk about Daniel Bruhl as Helmut Zemo, because, my God, this man just steals the show in every scene that he is in.
He really did. It was quite surprising because I guess we knew in advance that he was going to be in it, but we didn't really know that he was going to be great in it because he was sort of not a villain almost. Like he was a villain but not a villain. He was like an anti-hero kind of deal, and it was great.
You know what his role in this series kind of reminded me of? He kind of felt almost like Q. In that he's not quite a hero, he's not quite a villain, but he's not quite a hero, but he's not quite a villain, and he's just kind of there to just he's there to kind of help, but he's also gonna kind of tweak with our heroes a little bit, kind of flick their ears, annoy them a bit. But he absolutely stole the scene in every scene he was in, and I loved how they gave him some motivation beyond just because like he was great in Civil War, but like revenge is only a motive that can go so far. But I love that they gave him some actual like philosophy and motivation as to why he has such a hate on for super soldiers, and it was very interesting to watch the debate between him and Falcon and Bucky about the merits of the merits and pratfalls of the super soldier program. The one thing that I really kind of didn't like about his plot line is, and this ties into what I said earlier about the show kind of juggling too many balls at once or spinning too many plates, is this really felt like something that could have been a whole season on its own. Yeah. And I felt like it was really underserved by just being the focus of like one or two episodes. The Zemo arc could have been season 2 easily.
Yeah. Definitely. I hate to say it, but like I feel like you could have taken Zemo out and just sort of like skirted around some of that, and it would not have made a huge plot difference in the show. But on the other hand, he was sort of like a good source of comedy for it, which is really odd for Zemo. Like him dancing, him being sheepish, and what's great is that he was one of those guys where he clearly has his own motivations, and you're waiting for him to betray everybody, and he really doesn't. He's really not a liar. He's just he's honest about what he wants and what he thinks, and then he helps them along. And it's kind of refreshing for that sort of anti-hero.
And I also love how he, and again, this is one of the reasons why I wish he got a whole season out of him, because there's a really powerful moment with him right before he's taken into custody where Bucky corners him at the Sokovia Memorial and puts a gun to his head. And Zemo's just like, hey, I don't blame you at all. Go ahead and do it. And Bucky reveals that the gun is actually empty. And, that's kind of where Bucky finally sheds the last vestiges of his whole past with the Winter Soldier. And, you really see how far he's come. And I just thought that was a really neat moment.
Yeah. I really felt like Zemo had good chemistry with our main boys. Like every scene with them was great.
And then another surprise character in this series, Emily Van Camp as Sharon Carter.
Yes. So, Emily Van Camp is great. Sharon Carter's story is so unnecessary. Like even more than like Zemo's. Like I have it's not a huge issue. It just felt silly that it felt shoehorned in. The whole putting Sharon in and then revealing her to be revealing her to be basically one of the villains at the end of it. It just felt shoehorned in for this season. It's one of those things where Gonzo's right. We should have, if we had put this in for a second season or had it more of a teaser than making it more of the plot, because they sort of built up the power broker is so important and the power broker is so powerful, blah blah blah. We keep getting told, not shown.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of telling and not showing in this series, which I think is to the show's detriment. Because there's like I said before, a lot of the stuff that is big and important to these characters and their motivations, the show's just kind of like, we'll take our word for it.
I really liked the Sam and Isaiah arc. As small as it was, like that was that was one of those arcs that just like I was riveted to my seat the whole time anytime Isaiah was on screen, because like I want to know what happened to this guy. And when you finally find out what happened, it's like it's one of the few times I've watched a Marvel property and gotten angry.
Okay.
That's pretty much the end of my thought on that. Your turn now.
I mean, I think you're right about it was spinning too many plates, but the thing that I thought was the weakest link was everything having to do with Sharon Carter as the power broker, because they just sort of set up like, oh, here's, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm glad we went back to Sharon and came back around on what she's up to. But, like, setting her up as a villain, I guess? I mean, yeah, definitely they're setting her up as a villain. And, like, they kept alluding to, oh, there's this person called the Power Broker, and they're gonna help me, blah, blah, blah. Like, none of that was necessary. Like, obviously you need to fill out some stuff. I actually liked Carly and the Flag Smashers. I thought she was a very interesting villain, and I say this because the Marvel villains tend to not be that sympathetic, even though many of them are created to be sympathetic. And like, I think she has a bit of development over like a very subtle development of somebody who, over the course of the series, it's a little bit like Loki in the Avengers film, where she realizes that she's gone too far, but she can't turn back at that point. And she's trying to minimize the damage, but still make a point. And I just really enjoyed her. I thought she was very lovely. I really actually like that actress. She was in that Solo film, the Han Solo film. And I thought she's just really very interesting. She looks like she's 14, right? It's not just me.
No, like I said, she and I looked up. She is actually supposed to be a teenager in the series.
Yeah.
So
she looks like she's 14. Her actress is actually like 22, but she looks very young. Because actually, I don't think in any of the Marvel anythings have we had a villain that young. And so you have somebody who has very short amount of world experiences, but very, very traumatic ones. And she's sort of this trifecta of people trying to process their trauma. And the traumas are all very, very different. So you have the character of Isaiah, who had a very horrific traumatic experience and has processed his trauma by hiding and trying to leave it all behind. And then you have Bucky, who has also had very traumatic life and is processing his trauma by trying to fix it without owning it, if that makes sense. And then you have Carly, who is trying to process a trauma by being very, very overt about it and taking very, very drastic actions and to do what she thinks is right. And I think these are very, like, three different interesting takes on people trying to find stability in a world that has taken their lives away. And it's three different people with three different courses of action that I just think is really interesting that the show, has all these different ways of looking at things and has very different characters. Because a lot of what we've seen across the Marvel Cinematic Universe is heroes. And we don't really see the Isaiahs, the person who has rejected his abilities because of the people that he could give it to were the same people who traumatized him. Like, he can't bring himself to fight for a country that would not do the same for him. So I liked Carly. I loved Isaiah. I mean, like, yeah, for me, yeah, the biggest the biggest, like, why is this necessary, was everything with Sharon. Because they had already set up, like, other teammates for Sam. And I don't understand why they couldn't have fulfilled those same roles of just being an extra body to be in a fight. So I think they're setting up something else for her to do for some other future thing.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have to talk about, what's his name here? Wyatt Russell as John Walker, who I have got to give this guy, like, the ultimate props, because, like, after that first episode, like, he was, like, public enemy number one on the internet. And, like, I got to give him props for just being able to weather that and just keep going, just wait and see what happens. It's there is a plan here. But, like, he absolutely sold that role. And it's like his whole character is like he's got this. He serves as a perfect foil to Sam, because, like, they both have this legacy that has essentially been thrust upon them, and they're both reacting to the pressures of that in different ways. And Wyatt Russell absolutely sold the role of a man who has had this role thrust upon him, and he knows he can't really live up to the expectations, and he winds up cracking under the pressure. And, like, I thought that I was going to wind up just, like, utterly hating this guy, but, like, when he finally does crack, I actually felt it felt really bad, and it came across, like, really tragic that, like, because you see all the lead up to it, and you know that it's one of those things, like, like, it doesn't have to be this way. Just, like, no, John, stop. You know what's going to happen. And then when it happens, it's such a tragedy, because you know that it could have been avoided if, he'd gone right instead of left at, this juncture, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I thought he was such an interesting character, because you know that it's not going to go his way. You know it from the beginning. You know that the shield does not belong to him, but you gotta wonder what's it going to take to get it out of his hands. And it went south so fast. Because, again, this was a very short series, and it would have been nice if it was, a few episodes longer. 10 episodes would have been a really good number for this series.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was such a roller coaster of a character, and none of it felt unbelievable or forced or anything like that. He really is a guy who wants to do good. But he has very human foils that we haven't seen out of a lot of other MCU characters, which falls in line with a lot of, if you know a lot about people in the military, people who have PTSD, things like that, he doesn't have clean hands going into this. He's not the Boy Scout like Steve Rogers. This is a guy who has gotten his hands dirty over the course of his military career, and has fucked up at certain points in his life. And he really does want to do a good job, but he has that sort of
that shadow over him.
Yeah.
Both of his past and of the legacy of Steve Rogers.
Yeah, he's got this, like, hyper. He was immediately rejected by the people who could have worked with him. So if Bucky and Sam had sat with him and said, okay, if this is what people want, then, like, we'll give you some support. But immediately they rejected him, which, they were both very spurned by him taking the shield. But that wasn't really it wasn't his fault or his decision, Yeah. So they were getting mad at the wrong guy, and he was just there trying to do a good job, and was immediately quite handily rejected by the people who could have helped him realize his destiny as Captain America, so to speak. And also, he's not a super soldier, so everything's just a little bit harder for him, the same way that it's harder for Sam. So he's coming at this with all disadvantages. The advantage that he has is that he's the poster boy. He's what the politicians want Captain America to look like. and he's got a record and he's a patriot and all of this stuff, but he didn't have the support that he really needed, the real support that he needed, and he lost his shit. And that is just a whole bunch of, like, I mean, it's worth looking at that. The line that he has, which I was so happy that they put in, because I was already, before his court martial, thinking about the idea that he probably has PTSD and reacts very violently when triggered. In the fact that he said, "This is what you made me." And it's not just like, "Oh, you made me Captain America and I'm going to do whatever I want." It's, "This is what the military has made me. This is what the country has made me. This is what war has made me. And you're rejecting it because it's not good enough for you." The type of soldier that circumstances in his career have made him are being rejected because it's not clean. And he's no Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers, despite all the shit that happened in his own films, he was always seen as this perfect poster boy who could do no wrong. The fact that, he hurt a lot of people and there was a lot of collateral damage for his fights and stuff like that. But, he was an all-around American hero. And this guy who was in the trenches and got his hands dirty, he straight up killed a guy with the shield, and it was brutal. But it's not that much worse than we've seen other superheroes in the MCU do. It's just that this was on camera, and that's bad press. So he's being rejected for his dream, his life's work, because it's bad press. And not because he was doing something that no one else had done.
And in its own way, it also adds a little bit of weight to Isaiah's backstory, because we're seeing with Walker the evidence that, like, the government will make these soldiers and these characters to serve their purpose, and then once it becomes inconvenient, they'll just toss them away. Absolutely. And we kind of see in Walker's arc, we see Isaiah's backstory kind of play out, kind of repeat itself.
Absolutely. So Walker is he's a bad person. But he's, to me, in my mind, he's like the main villain of the show rather than Carly. Whereas Carly is like kind of a villain, but she's just way too soft and sweet. And anyway, you kind of end the series with two villains who aren't really villains, because you can sympathize with both of them. And the fact that, like, even though Walker did what he did, he still comes back, puts on a costume, and fights alongside them to defeat the Flag Smashers. And you're like, okay, that didn't mean a shit to them. Like, it meant nothing to the supers that he just walked right back in and was like, okay, let's get this shit done. So I just thought it was very interesting that it ended the series with no villains. Because even Zemo hung out with them for a few episodes, is still like, I'm just gonna chill in jail, happy as can be. You're like, wow, it was such a strange show for there not to be like a Mandarin or an Ironmonger or something like that. There was no arch villain that you could pin all of the bad stuff on. You just had, two groups or two people who were doing the wrong thing for the right reasons.
See, I kind of disagree with your conclusion that Walker's an out and out villain. I'd maybe call him an anti-villain, because, like you said, he genuinely wants to do the right thing, and he just doesn't really know how to do it. And like you said, he certainly doesn't get any help in that department. And I'd call him an anti-villain. I'd call him basically, like, he's not a hero by any stretch, just based on his actions. But I would say that he is, at his core, a decent person, but doesn't really know how to actually be decent. If that makes sense.
His training did not allow for the soft hand.
Yeah.
that
So
the superhero needs. He's an antagonist for sure, though, because he's not there to be their ally.
yeah, I'd agree that he's an antagonist, but the villain I think is a bit much. I'm interested to see what they do with him as the U.S. agent. So I think what now that he's out of Steve's shadow and has his own name to make, I think what he does with that will be what really proves him. And I think that's what is going to be part of the arc of season 2. But yeah, but I mean, this is just even as much as I railed on Carly earlier, you know, there aren't any outright bad characters in this series. Every character, you know, none of them really get the development or the time in the sun that they really deserve. But again, a lot of that goes back to the series was just way too short. Make the season 10 episodes long and save the whole super soldier serum plot for season 2, and I feel like a lot of the issues with this series that I have with this series would have been fixed. There's also some minor things that I was just kind of confused about, and one of them was one of the subplots of this series is the relationship between Sam and his sister, and the fact that she wants to sell the family boat and he doesn't. And there's a sort of thread that runs in their relationship that, you know, Sarah's like, oh, well, you know, you had to go run off and fight monsters and aliens and stuff for 5 years while I was stuck here. And she seems kind of resentful of him for that. And I'm kind of sitting here thinking, she knows he spent the last 5 years as the contents of an ashtray, right? He wasn't out doing no daring do. She knows he's been dead for 5 years, right? Like, did he just never tell her that? Like, I kind of got the impression that she didn't really have the full story as to what happened to Sam during the snap. So I feel like that's one of those areas where the writing kind of stumbled, because the whole time I'm seeing them go their back and forth on this, I'm kind of going, he wasn't off doing no daring do. He was dead. Like, it's not like he could have done anything to help you out in the last 5 years. I mean, the man was a pile of dust. What do you want from him? Am I the only one who got that impression, or is that just me?
I think that's just you, because I got like pure sibling out of all of their interactions, because you can be understanding and still sort of resent them because they weren't there for you when you needed them, and that hurt is not you're not immune to that hurt just because the excuse was good, you know?
Yeah.
I think they have a really, really excellent sibling relationship, and I'm really glad it was there, because Sam is one of those characters that we haven't gotten to see his personal life. He's always been there as a sidekick. Like, let's be real here. He's been there as Cap's sidekick this entire time. And so he has not been fleshed out as a person outside of Wings. Yeah. And so getting to see him having a strong family relationship is a really nice comparison to Bucky, who has nothing left, as he states. He has no family, he has no friends. He's just got his therapist and a booklet. So like it was nice for Bucky to get to see that side of Sam, and for us to get to see that side of Sam, so we can go, oh my gosh, yeah, he has such a fleshed out life outside of this.
Yeah.
Kind of like we got with Hawkeye in previous films, but like less weirdly put. Yeah.
Well, like I said, the that was just something that I was just a little unclear on, as to whether or not Sarah actually knew the full story of what happened with Sam. Another thing that I thought was very unclear was basically the status of the people who were snapped away versus the people who were staying behind. So like, you know, there's all this talk of like, you know, the refugees, and I was like, okay, so are the refugees the people who were snapped away, or were they the people who were left behind? Who is the GRC really helping? You know, there was a lot basically of that backstory that wasn't really made clear, or we were just kind of, again, told to listen and believe and just take the show's word for it. Like, one of the things that we're told by Carly is that, you know, the GRC are forcibly pulling people out of their homes and forcing them out into the streets to make room for the people coming back from the snap, but we're never actually shown that. So there was a lot that was really unclear about what was going on behind the scenes with the GRC and who was actually being displaced and who was getting screwed over. And I feel like that, again, that's one of those things that we really need to see some real direct evidence on, because it wasn't really until the third episode that I started to figure out, okay, so the Flag Smashers are the people who are left behind and they're pissed off at the people who are coming back. And, finally figuring out basically where all the cards sat. Again, there was a lot of telling and not showing with the GRC and what was happening with the refugees and the people coming back from the snap, which again goes back to what I said earlier about, I think Carly would have been much better served by having the script flipped on where and having her actually be one of the people who was snapped away and came back and getting screwed over that way. Because again, that's something that not only is that something that Sam has been through that whole chain of events himself, but that's something we actually see direct evidence of in the show with the whole scene at the bank. So, like I said, there's some stuff in the world building that I feel like the show could have done a little better to be clear on. But again, that goes back to the show not being long enough and spinning too many plates at one time while it's doing so. Do you have anything to add to that thought, or should we just move on?
No, you literally reiterated the exact same thing that you reiterated 10 minutes ago.
Okay, but anyways, we're kind of running low on time here, so let's talk about some standout moments. So, Kat, what was a real big standout moment to you of this series?
Okay, two things. Zemo dancing in the club was the funniest thing I've ever seen. It was just so stupid. It was so unnecessary, but so funny. It was great. I mean, I think the most important thing is obviously in the final episode of the season, Sam busting in the Captain America costume, which is his costume from the comics. So the wings, the goggles, the everything, how important a moment that is to truly define him not as the Falcon, but as Captain America. That's the money shot. Like, that's it. That's what, like, I can't describe how cool it is that the official Captain America Twitter no longer shows pictures of Steve Rogers. Like, it's so great. We finally get to see, like, the thing that we have all sort of suspected was going to happen for some time now. We got it. It's here.
Yeah, the new Captain America costume for Sam was great. Although I'll say the same thing that I say the comics. I think the mask looks silly. I think that's the one misstep. Is I think that helmetless mask just looks silly.
I think it looks a bit like the whatever the fuck it is that you would call whatever Gambit wears in the comics, in the old cartoons and stuff. Like this weird covering of the ears. I don't know how I feel about that. It's fine. It's all fine. It's just something different.
See, my favorite standout moments were the final battle with the helicopter, where Sam's coordinating with one of the hostages and playing like, okay, we're gonna count down from 5, and at 1 you're gonna grab the control, and he does this like spinning Hurley thing, like buzzsaw bit with the shield, and then tackles the pilot clear through the helicopter. I thought that whole action sequence was just great. And then the moment that had me really teared up was like right at the end, where Sam takes Isaiah to the Smithsonian to show him the new exhibit all about Isaiah and the things that he went through, and he's like, well, now the country will never forget what you did for them. And seeing Isaiah just like, tear up the fact that he's finally getting the credit that's his due. Like, stuff like that really kind of hits on me because I come from a military family. So like the idea of like, valor being honored and rewarded as it should be is something that's really important to me. It's really important to me that, our veterans get the credit that they're due. And like I said, Isaiah's whole subplot in the series, this is the first time I've watched a Marvel property and gotten pissed off because like none of this should have happened to this guy. Like, and he for someone who's served their country to get screwed over in such an abhorrent way, it was just like, goes against everything I believe in. So like, to see him get his due, at the end of the season was, I feel, the most powerful moment of the show, and I feel like it really tied everything together really well. So, but yeah, any other stand-up moments for you?
God, it's so pointless, but I love the banter between Bucky and Sam about don't hit on my sister. Because there is just nice chemistry there, and how well Bucky fits in with his family. I just love that Bucky got to experience, even if he's not genuinely hitting on his sister. I just love the idea that he got to spend some time with normal people doing normal people things, and got to spend that time not being a super soldier, not being a freak of nature, just being this guy who helps with a boat. The boat is the metaphor for their relationship, and they need to work together to put it back together.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's just really lovely. No,
I love the moment when they were fixing the boat and Sam asked why I didn't use the metal hand, and Bucky's like, I didn't even think about it. I'm right-handed. Okay, so just to wrap things up, so assuming that the show gets a season 2, what are some things that you would like to see done in season 2?
Given the plot of the first season heavily dealing with racism, I don't think they're going to be able to escape addressing it again in season 2, because this was sort of like the baby step, the very first step, like the most difficult step for Sam of do I want to take up the mantle of this, and do I think the country will accept a black man wearing the shield? And then it became, they're going to have to learn to deal with it. And so I think the second season will probably, if they do it, have to address some of those fears becoming a reality, and how he processes it, how his family processes it, and how the government frames it. I think would be really good things for them to touch on, since that was a primary fear of the first season. It would lead naturally to addressing it in the second season. I am curious to see what they do with US Agent. I know next to nothing about the character, so I don't know if he's like Nuke or something, where he's more of a bad guy than a good guy. Yeah, I'd like to see more of
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get over the fact that you know who Nuke is, because he is a very obscure character.
He was 100% in Jessica Jones. That's why I know. Because Jessica Jones had that same character archetype of a super patriot who would do anything for his country. Military background, super soldier serum, goes crazy. It's literally a season of Jessica Jones.
Well, then that explains it, because I only saw, I think it was the third season of Jessica Jones. Yeah, okay.
I think Nuke is in the first season and ends up having to be one of the people that they beat up. But you also see that one of the, a comic book panel going around of Captain America having to explain what patriotism is to Nuke.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was like, oh, who the fuck's that guy? Oh, that's that guy that's in Jessica Jones. Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that they did kind of do a very similar thing to what Jessica Jones did, and both handled it very differently and very well. I would like to see if they do anything else with Zemo, because Zemo kind of got what he wanted out of this series, and was just kind of chillaxing in prison. And I wonder if they'll call on him again for his knowledge about something or another, and need to bring back a obnoxiously rich guy.
See, I don't think they can do anything more with Zemo, because his whole arc in this series and in Civil War was his hatred of the super soldier program and the Avengers, and I don't know, I suppose they could bring him back to, they could bring him back in an Avengers movie, I guess, as an antagonist. But as far as the series and the super soldier serum goes, I don't really think there's really much more they can do with him. So,
I'm curious if they did do something with him, because it would have to be a real big stretch. But They talked a few times about what's the place where they lock up all the bad guys? The Raft.
The Raft. Yeah.
I feel like the fact that they brought it up several times is maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's nothing. But maybe we're gonna get an Arkham thing where there's a problem with the Raft and everybody that they've locked up escapes, and then they have to go deal with that.
That might be interesting. I'd like to see the second season kind of focus a little bit more on Bucky. The first season focused very much on Sam, and justifiably so. But I think the second season, if they focus a little bit more on Bucky and more on like his struggles with readjusting to normal life, or maybe like some ghost from his past as the Winter Soldier comes back to haunt him. I like to see something like that, because I think it would make a nice opportunity to see Sam and Bucky working together as an actual team, and not the teeth clenched teamwork that we got this season. And I also think it would provide a nice opportunity for Sam to practice his skills as a veterans therapist, because that's something that we haven't really seen him do a whole lot of since the Winter Soldier. Because a lot of people forget that he's actually got some therapist training through the Veterans Association, and I think that it would be really neat to see him kind of helping Bucky further along on his journey towards healing and finally putting his demons to rest.
Yeah, he did a little bit of that, just for a little bit. He was sort of like counseling him, and you kind of got that nice callback. But yeah, I think something that focuses more on Bucky, not as the former Winter Soldier, but as the White Wolf, would be interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, but that is about all the time that we have for this week. So listeners, what did you think of Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Go ahead and be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And that is all the time that we have for this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
All right, we'll see you later. Taka, play us out.